Hello and welcome to SAP TechEd Virtual in 2023. You've tuned into our session on guidance and best practices for SAP Business Technology Platform and beyond. My name is Konstantin Heine, and as you can see, I'm not alone in this beautiful studio here. I'm here with my team colleague Katrin. Hello, Katrin.
Hi there.
In the next 25 minutes, we will provide you some packed information on some announcements we want to make, some news, and we even have to celebrate something today, right? A birthday,
right.
But we will come to that later. So, Katrin, when preparing for the session, I was checking the registration numbers, and I still believe there are some people new to SAP BTP. So my first question to you, how would you define or describe SAP Business Technology Platform in a nutshell?
Yeah, okay, let's start with a quick introduction into SAP BTP. So this is the technology foundation from SAP, and it's an open, unified platform which is really optimized for business-centric use cases, right? So here it's really used for SAP applications and delivers everything to integrate and extend and build innovations in context of SAP applications. And with the platform, we are also addressing different personas, right? As you know, we have the SAP Build and now also the Build Code offering, which addresses the IT professional developers and also so-called citizen developers. And both of them would like or want to build a comprehensive solution on BTP. So, and for this reason, you need to look at the platform and the development and architecture holistically. So here you need actually an end-to-end approach on architecting solutions and developing solutions and also operating solutions on BTP. Konstantin, do you have some examples, or can you explain how such an end-to-end guidance can look like?
Yeah, you just mentioned, I mean, it's if you look at the picture, a very comprehensive picture, and we both work in product management, so we received a lot of feedback over the last month and even years. And building end-to-end applications can be challenging because there are a lot of options, right? And this is why I'm very happy to announce today that we launched today the SAP BTP Guidance Framework. So the SAP BTP Guidance Framework is the central entry point for architects, developers, and administrators when it comes to end-to-end guidance, building end-to-end applications. So we've chosen a focused approach on different personas, the architects, the developers, and administrators. We, of course, know that the roles might be different in every company. So it's not really a static distinction between the roles, but rather a collaboration here. Everything is built on top of the Business Technology Platform and shares a common foundation, like, for example, best practices, but also learning and enablement, and also the community. Now, of course, there's a lot of content included. And why don't you walk us through the content categories of this framework?
Yeah, sure. Happy to do so. Yeah, so what is the BTP Guidance Framework? So this is actually the compass for architecting, developing, and operating solutions on the BTP platform. So in terms of content categories, we offer, for instance, decision guides, right? Helping you to figure out when to use which tool, right? Sometimes we have some technology services on BTP which you can choose. And also sometimes these are embedded as part of SAP lines of business applications, right? So here you need to find out which one to use for which requirement. Then we have, for instance, reference architectures, which address several personas, right? They are actually for the solution architects, but also very useful for developers to figure out which kind of technologies and services to choose and to combine to develop really such a comprehensive end-to-end solution. Then we have recommendations for administrators, right, to build secure and enterprise-grade and operate these solutions. We have methodologies and also DevOps best practices along that. Yeah, sure. And now let's take a look at an example.
Yeah, let's unpack the content categories a little bit. And don't worry, we won't go through all the different content types here now in the session. But if you know BTP, you probably recognize some of the terms you can see here. So what we did on the one hand side is we collected some of the assets that exist already under the umbrella of the BTP Guidance Framework. But again, if you know BTP, you might also spot some names here on the slide that are new. And these new things are some contents, some assets, so to speak, that we want to introduce to you today. Now, I just want to call out three things here. One is, for example, the Integration Architecture Guide. So this is a very comprehensive document that describes how to build hybrid integration landscapes. And this is around for some years already. And we've decided to put this under the umbrella of the guidance framework. We also put in the security recommendations. There's another session today on security in SAP BTP, and the security recommendations are a fundamental element of this whole framework. And also DevOps is very important here, and you can see, especially in this area, this is, for example, shared between two different roles like developers and administrators. Now we will deep dive into 3 topics now. But before we go to this topic, Katrin, did you know we have to celebrate a birthday today?
Really?
Do you know what happened 10 years ago?
I have an idea, yeah.
10 years ago at SAP TechEd 2013, we launched the SAP Integration Solution Advisory methodology.
Oh, yeah, cool.
So what do you need for a birthday?
Yeah, actually, a party.
And a cake.
Oh,
do we have a birthday cake?
Let's see.
Let's see. Look how it automatically appears here on the table. Thank you very much.
Oh, great.
So happy birthday, SAP Integration Solution Advisory methodology. 10 years. This is, to be honest, in SAP years, quite old.
Yeah.
Do you have some numbers to share for this methodology?
Yeah, so actually with the SAP Integration Solution Advisory methodology, we have now actually a community with roughly 3,000 members, right? A mix of partners and customers and consultants also contributing to the methodology, right? It's actually already a very well-adopted and proven methodology.
And I keep the cake close to me, right? So it's secure. If you think about the Integration Solution Advisory methodology, what are the 2 recent highlights that come to your mind?
Yeah, so here we have recently delivered a tool-based approach for the methodology, which is the integration assessment capability within SAP Integration Suite. And this helps you actually to automate, to apply the methodology and helps you to manage actually the development lifecycle of integration assets from end to end. Another example is actually a documentation we are now providing, right, which actually describes the methodology in detail. And this is also complemented with a set of templates which are easy to use and easy to implement.
And looking at the slides, they are siblings, right? So 2 new methodologies. So do you also want to introduce them?
Yeah, the family actually grew. So here we have launched 1.5 years ago the SAP Application Extension methodology, right? And then half a year ago, it's the SAP Data and Analytics Advisory methodology, right? And these are technology domain-specific methodologies. They share all the same DNA but are optimized actually for a specific technology category, right?
And you already mentioned domain-specific, but I think it's very important to mention here that they share the same foundation, right? So they share similar approaches. But it's very important. I just want to mention one example here. The application extension methodology is pretty much focused on, as the name says, extensions. And you can imagine when you have a heterogeneous SAP and non-SAP landscape, extensions is always, to build an extension strategy, something that comes with different options. And this is why, for example, in the AEM, we focus, for example, on extension tasks, and in the data and analytics advisory methodology, we follow more an enterprise architecture approach using capabilities. Now, using the extensions as an example, this is usually also very developer heavy. And this brings me to the next announcement, the SAP BTP Developers Guide. So this guide is a guide that we launched today. You might have watched already the session that was happening earlier today. The SAP BTP Developers Guide is really an end-to-end guidance for developers. It is document that includes, for example, architecture blueprints with a curated list of BTP services. It also includes the description of the service and software delivery process, but also it's very closely connected to tutorials. So you can basically read, so to speak, the theory and then put it into action. So I have to admit, I've never worked officially as a developer at SAP, and this is why my colleague Raphael Schmitz is actually way better in explaining the content here. So if you haven't watched the session, I recommend to watch the recording of the session XP107v, guiding developers to implement business applications on SAP BTP. Now, I mentioned I never worked as a developer. You neither, if I'm right, but we both worked or started at SAP as integration consultants, right?
True.
So there was one term that kept me up at night all the years, and this was reference architectures.
Oh, yeah.
So what are reference architectures? Where do I find them? How can I use them? And is PowerPoint really a scalable thing to represent reference architectures? And this is why I'm very happy to announce the release of the BTP reference architectures.
Yeah, so here I'm happy to share also the news that we have released reference architectures for SAP BTP at SAP Discovery Center. These offer actually created solution templates and help you to design and architect solutions on BTP. So here we are covering actually the different technology categories like integration, data and analytics, and also cover multi-platform architectures along that. And here we have also a dedicated session on that tomorrow, so feel free to check out XP107 to explore details on these specific reference architectures. So what are the reference architectures all about? So these actually provide an architecture diagram which describes the scope and interplay of technology services and also how they integrate with business applications. We also provide guiding information which helps you to understand and also to implement and adopt such kind of reference architecture. Yeah, they are part of the Discovery Center and with that also connected with the existing assets there. For instance, the services, which are the building blocks of the reference architectures, and the missions, which are implementable solution variants of reference architectures. But now let's dive into a demo and take a look at the reference architectures. So here we just open a browser and with that, oops.
I put the elephant.
Where is the mouse? Ah, it's on the wrong window. Ah, there it is. Okay, so if you are new to the Discovery Center, you can easily find it with entering in your browser sap.com/disco.
Which is a great URL, by the way. I just want to mention this.
Yes, and with that, you land at SAP Discovery Center, right? And here you can see actually the different tiles, as mentioned, the services, the missions, and the reference architectures for BTP. So here you can actually explore the initial scope of reference architectures for BTP, which will for sure grow over time. So we have, as of today, reference architectures for different content categories available, like for integration, data and analytics, and hyperscaler. So hyperscalers are the ones referring also combining services of BTP with services from other vendors like AWS, Azure, and Google. So now let's take a look at an example of a reference architecture. Let's take the example of master data integration because every business needs to deal with master data and needs to integrate it. So at the center stage, you find the architecture diagram, right, describing the scope of the services and how they connect with the applications. And further below, you find a short description, the flow of data across the components, also characteristics describing actually and helping you to identify whether this is the right reference architecture for your needs. We have examples in an SAP context, also alternative design options, and everything is here connected to other categories of Discovery Center, like the services and components. Here you can jump, for instance, into the details of the different services. And also we have added here related missions, so which are implementable solution variants of the reference architectures. And with that, you can actually continue your journey by starting a mission and implementing actually a specific variant of this reference architecture.
So you really have the direct connection to putting things into action, right? It's not just the theoretical part, but it's really at the place where you can also start then building what you want to do.
Right.
Okay, because this was one of the questions I received earlier. Why did you build that into the SAP Discovery Center? And the answer is because this is where everything is in a central place to really combine this.
True.
Okay.
Okay. Moving back to the presentation.
Okay, so we've seen now the reference architectures in SAP Discovery Center. Let's wait until the presentation comes back. Okay, let's stay there for a minute. Maybe you can just start the presentation mode again on your laptop.
Yeah.
And it's very important to mention, I mentioned PowerPoint earlier. Of course, there are also some reference architectures that we have in other places, but this is something that will grow over time. So this is now a starting point where we really put the reference architectures for BTP into the Discovery Center. So now the basic question is, how do you access the BTP guidance framework and all the things we've just shown? So it's very simple. Just scan the QR code or click on the link. If you get to the session materials, you should be able to download them in the event platform. And to wrap it up, we have announced 3 things. Number 1 is the SAP BTP Guidance Framework, what you can see here on the screen. The second thing is the SAP BTP Developers Guide. And the third thing is the reference architectures in SAP Discovery Center. I would say, let's move to Q&A and see what people would like to know.
Okay.
Live Q&A.
So, Katrin, there's one question. I think it's a yes-no question that you already answered.
Right.
I hope the number of reference architectures will grow in the coming days. Is there a plan to do so?
Yeah, for sure. So this is just the first shot, which we compiled and released for TechEd, right? So we will grow the scope for sure over time. And also introduce new categories, right, like extensibility and more for data and analytics and artificial intelligence to come.
And also in terms of functionality, I guess there's also something coming, right? So we're looking at the icons, for example.
Yeah, so here currently we're delivering here the SAP delivered versions of the reference architectures, but we are also working that you can adapt these according to your needs and also build your own reference architectures. So if you already would like to enjoy a sneak preview, be invited to join tomorrow the Jumpstart session about SAP BTP solution diagrams, where you can learn how to build such diagrams with the BTP services icons and shapes.
Okay. Another question we received is, why do we call it framework? So why is it called guidance framework? And let me maybe start answering the question, and then you can chime in. I think we started with this whole project, I think 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. And our initial assumption really was to build one methodology for Business Technology Platform. Now, we had a lot of conversations with customers and partners, and what we found out is actually it's not really a step-by-step methodology like SAP Activate, for example. It's really a pick-and-choose approach that customers and partners need, right? There's so many different things you can do with BTP, and depending on the domain and the task you want to execute, there's really a specific information, a piece of information you need. And this is why we've chosen the word framework, and this is why it's also very open. It will be extended, of course, in future. So this is just the starting point today. And do you want to add anything to this?
No, that's correct, right? And also for supporting the different personas, right? So these personas are also in flux, and here we are also following an open approach that developers can, for instance, pick and choose also assets which are maybe more related to other categories and so on. So here it's really a flexible consumption model.
Very good. And then another question that we received is actually related to some topics around best practices. So we've also embedded best practices here. So what I learned also at an event 3 months ago, I think, that the SAP Best Practices Guide is not well known yet. So the guide actually exists. So if you access the guidance framework, and maybe I just go back one step, so you can scan the QR code, and you click on the best practices part in the foundation, so to speak, of the guidance framework, you can access this guide. And this is also something where we, for example, from the German-speaking SAP user group have received feedback on topics to be added here. And this is now, in progress. And let's say, I think if we look at the guidance framework in 1 year, it will look completely different.
Right. And there's also a question, is the reference architectures referring only to SAP products or also eventually to non-SAP products, right? So here we have put actually the BTP services into the center stage, right? But as you have seen also in the demo, we have also reference architectures for multi-platform environments where we're, for instance, combining the services of BTP together with native services, for instance, from AWS, Azure, and Google and other vendors, and also on the integration side. Even though the platform is optimized for SAP applications, it's open to integrate also with non-SAP applications. And here we always show the option to integrate with SAP and also with third-party solutions.
Okay. And I also see a question, will the guides cover all the BTP scoped services listed in the XP107v session? So this was the session on the SAP BTP Developers Guide. So the answer is we work together very closely with the team who created the Developers Guide, and the guide is actually part of the guidance framework, so it's basically embedded into the framework. But if you access the guidance framework, this is really something you can see because you're redirected to this development guide. Okay. Any other questions we want to take?
There was
it's very tempting to eat the cake, but if you want to continue.
There was one question, if the reference architectures will be available by default in the LeanIX. So here the acquisition is still not closed, therefore we cannot communicate actually any details here on the roadmap plans. However, we have chosen an approach which is also supported by LeanIX. And here we will actually share more details about roadmap information once the acquisition will have been closed.
Okay. Nevertheless, I have to do some advertising now because I'm also one of the track leads for the BTP General track. We had a great session today on LeanIX that happened earlier today, and I also recommend to watch the recording because this also shows the partnership between LeanIX and SAP and NTT Data. So I can recommend to watch this session. So to wrap it up, what we recommend is to just access the guidance framework, provide feedback to us directly, either via LinkedIn, via email, or in the SAP community. I hope you enjoy SAP TechEd, and we enjoy the cake now, right?
Okay, yeah.
Okay,
thanks for joining, and goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Oh, it looks very tasty. And you made it, right?
Yeah, sure.
You made it. It's not a cake bought in the bakery.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now we have to eat the cake. 3, 2, 1.